You're staring at a whole shelf of kitchen gadgets, and the dough sheeter sits right there looking like the answer to your pastry night frustrations. You've probably asked yourself, will this actually save me time, or am I just swapping one expensive tool for another that I'll end up tucking away? You don't want to waste money on something that sounds great on paper, but falls flat when you try to roll out a batch of croissants for a Sunday brunch. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's dig into whether the VEVOR commercial dough sheeter lives up to the hype for home bakers and small-scale pros, and where it might trip you up before you hit that buy now button. First off, the biggest question for anyone eyeing a dough sheeter is whether it actually makes a difference in the kitchen workflow. I've spent a few evenings testing the machine on everything from puff pastry sheets for a quick apple turnover to a thick fondant slab for a wedding cake. The 19.7-inch rollers feel solid enough to handle the pressure you need for a smooth sheet, and the reversible design means you can flip the rollers to keep the dough from sticking to one side after a few passes. That reverse function saved me a few minutes each time I switched from a delicate croissant lamination to a heavier biscuit dough need to manually lift and reposition the sheet. The adjustable thickness knob is the real workhorse here. It slides from a near zero setting all the way up to about 1.4 inches, which is surprisingly flexible for a machine this size. When I was making puff pastry, I started at the thinnest setting, rolled the dough, folded, and rolled again. Each pass gave a consistent, even layer without the dough tearing or sticking. Then I cranked the thickness up for a fondant roll, and the machine kept the sheet uniform, which is something a hand-rolled sheet rarely achieves. The fact that you can fine-tune the thickness on the fly makes it adaptable for a range of recipes, whether you're aiming for paper-thin Danish layers or a sturdier base for a rustic tart. Now, who should actually consider buying this thing? If you're a hobbyist who finds yourself making pastries at least a few times a week, or if you run a small CAF that needs to keep a steady flow of croissants, puff pastry, or even pizza dough, the VEVOR sheeter can shave 30+ minutes off your prep time. The folding design means the rollers themselves act as a sort of built-in dough folder, which is handy when you're doing lamination. It's also a good fit for someone who wants a commercial-look appliance without stepping into a full-scale bakery budget. The machine's footprint just under a foot wide fits nicely on a standard counter, so you don't need a dedicated workspace. On the flip side, if you're the occasional weekend baker who only rolls out a single batch of cookies or a simple pie crust once a month, this might be overkill. The machine's power draw is noticeable. It plugs into a standard 120-volt outlet, but you'll hear a low hum as it ramps up, which can be a bit loud in a quiet kitchen. Also, the 19.7-inch rollers set a lower limit on the size of dough you can work with. If you routinely need to roll sheets longer than 2 feet for large batch productions, you'll find yourself trimming or refeeding the dough, which adds extra steps. And while the reversible operation is great for most dough types, it can be a little confusing the first few times you try to switch directions. There's no indicator light, just a mechanical click that tells you the rollers have flipped. A practical weakness I ran into was the stable puffing claim. In theory, the rollers should keep the dough's rise even as you roll, but with very high hydration doughs, think ciabatta or focaccia, the machine can struggle to maintain an even thickness without you manually adjusting the pressure. You end up having to pause, dust the rollers, and re-engage. It's not a deal breaker, but it does mean the sheeter is most comfortable with doughs that have a moderate hydration level, something that many pastry recipes already meet. Another thing to flag is the cleaning routine. Because the rollers are reversible, you have to flip them to clean each side properly. The metal surfaces can get a thin film of dough residue after a few uses, and while a quick wipe with a damp cloth does the trick, you'll need to be a bit more thorough if you switch from a sweet dough to a salty one to avoid flavor crossover. The machine does come with a small brush for the crevices, which helps, but it does add a small maintenance step you won't find on a simple rolling pin. So, weighing the pros and cons, the VEVOR commercial dough sheeter delivers on its promise of consistent, adjustable rolls for a variety of doughs, and the reversible mechanism does cut down on the fiddly work of flipping sheets manually. The biggest value you get is the time.